The smoke, the flames, and the frightened faces. All in a firefighter's line of duty. But Chief William Hitchcock remembers the night it wasn't the fire that almost stopped him.
Oh, I was scared to death.
But the fire escape that broke underneath him.
Where the railing just came away from the building.
And our investigation found across Massachusetts more unsafe fire escapes. Rusty, deteriorating, crumbling, broken. And what state officials didn't know, the system they set up to keep fire escapes safe is also falling apart.
The potential ramifications are disastrous.
So let's look at this one. This expert ironworker is licensed to build, maintain, and inspect fire escapes. So then over here? For months, we examined dozens of them with alarming results. Looking at this today, would this pass inspection?
No.
In dormitories, at theaters, at homes, and apartment buildings. Rust is actually eating away the metal of the fire escape.
Correct.
And the bottom line?
It'll get weak and then eventually it'll fall.
This one has rotted connections. This one missing bolts, twisted metal. Would the stairs come down?
No, never come down.
This one a broken tread. So how dangerous is it for the people inside this building?
This fire escape is definitely going to put somebody either in the hospital or it's going to put somebody in a cemetery.
Fire escapes are so critical. The state building code requires they be certified for structural adequacy and safety every 5 years. But our investigation found that safeguard is simply being ignored. Here's proof. We chose fire escapes at random in Boston, Somerville, Cambridge, Worcester, and here in Quincy. We checked building department files, but there's no fire escape certification.
Not in this file.
To see if building owners had submitted their mandatory inspection reports. There's no certification in this one either.
Right.
Bottom line, not one we checked in Quincy had been certified as safe. And the director of inspectional services admitted because of staffing shortages, the city has no idea how many other fire escape owners are breaking the rules. And as a result, do you know how many fire escapes in your city are safe or not?
Well, I don't know.
In Worcester, not one we checked was certified. In Somerville,
No.
4 more fire escapes.
Did it fall through the cracks? Yeah.
Not one up-to-date certification. And again, no system for keeping track. How can they get away with that?
I guess the shortest answer of all is because we don't have the resources to sit here and follow up on these things.
If structural deficiencies are reported, local building inspectors can actually evacuate residents until repairs are made. Would you talk to us on camera about this? No? But when we surveyed 24 more communities, most admitted they had no idea how many fire escapes were certified. In Taunton, inspectors told us they haven't seen a certification in 25 years. Northampton officials said it's a cold day in hell when that happens. In Cambridge, too, not one of our test buildings was certified, and the official in charge would not come out to discuss it. In Boston, where there are more than 8,000 fire escapes, again, according to inspectional services, not one we checked was certified. Officials know they are required to enforce the building code, but they admit they don't always know if owners are breaking the law. The building code is being ignored.
Right, but it's difficult to write a violation when you don't have knowledge of something like that.
But state officials say for a critical issue like this, communities should know. And they warn the Massachusetts building code is not optional. Does it worry you that these fire escapes are not being certified?
This is an important issue and should not be ignored.
That's because after the smoke and flames begin, it'll be too late to learn you've got no way out.
I can't stress it enough, Hank, that these things have to be maintained and someone's got to be watching.
As a result of our investigation, state officials will now issue an alert to local inspectors. Meanwhile, if there's a fire escape on your home or office, you can contact your local building department to make sure it's properly certified. In the newsroom, I'm Hank Philippi Ryan.
Hi everybody, a lot of new faces, huh? A lot of new staff here. So, everybody knows inspectors need to have that stubborn streak and that single-mindedness to get to point B with everything happening around you. Legendary. I've seen some guys with dogged determination before, but legendary. When he took his show on the road for fire escapes in Boston to changing the way fire marshals nationally are viewing fire escapes. He's moved a big chunk of his operation to California. Every time I call him, I'm in Oregon, I'm in New Jersey, I'm in Florida, I'm in Utah. He He's been absolutely everywhere, teaching the fire marshals and the guys that have been signing off on this stuff for years, the error of their ways, and with amazing results. He's single-handedly changed code, state after state after state. Massachusetts, we're very, very slow on the uptake, even though we've had a law on the books for a long, long time. It's stunning to me how in Massachusetts you would buy a car in a heartbeat from California because it's got no rust, right? You want a 67 Mustang, California car. Woohoo, right? Once a year they got to inspect them there. There's no rust. You got to inspect them once a year in LA and then in California. Every 5 years in Massachusetts. Try and sell your Massachusetts Mustang in California. Right? So all of these things, these kind of crazy discrepancies, these silly views of how these things happen and all these differences nationally, it just kind of takes the bull by the horns and grinds it to where it needs to be. I love you. You're an example to us all. So that said, Cisco Menses from Fire Escape Services, one kind of fine guy.
Thank you for that great introduction. And a lot of it that you mentioned before was just that fire escapes, I call them not a term, but the bastard child of egress. You know everything about a building, smoke detectors, you know everything about the windows, lead paint, you know everything. But the last thing anybody and everybody has ever touched in over 75 years has been the fire escape. You walk into a building, as an example, you walk into a building that somebody removed the rear staircase on the inside just to expand their closets, and you'll shut that building down like that. Fire department's there, building department's there. You take that same building and you put a fire escape on the outside, and all the treads are missing on it. And they'll give that guy 30 days, 60 days, 90 days to fix it. It's the same second means of egress, but if you put it inside, everybody treats it with kid gloves and everybody gets in an uproar because. But as soon as you take that bastard child of egress and you stick it outside, out of sight, out of mind, but the code is there. Because every apartment needs 2 means of egress. An interior staircase, which is usually when you walk in the building, and then some form of exterior staircase. Now, exterior staircases in a lot of these buildings came because the buildings were modified in their past. So a lot of these beautiful 2.5-story homes that are now 2 families, 3 families, in some rare cases, 5 families, the only answer to them was a fire escape on the back. Okay? And that's the only way they could satisfy this building being modified into so many apartments is because they had a fire escape literally out every little window. A couple of things you're going to go right off the bat. No fire escapes out of bathroom windows. No fire escapes out of usually kitchen windows. All fire escapes must go out of a bedroom because the only place you're going to need it in order to get out of a fire is at night when you're sleeping and it's out of a bedroom window. So what we've done, and again, this all happened, I'll show you, I'll tell you what we covered. And we did it from Boston all the way to Seattle, Texas. Fire Escape Academy is a free website. And it's on YouTube. So you go to YouTube and you're going to see Fire Escape Academy is every seminar we've done is now free online. So this class is actually getting recorded as we speak, and it's going to be free online. So in case you forget anything, you fall asleep because of the beautiful coffee notice that we have here, you can always do a refresher course. Future people that are going to be training, you just have to watch this. And if not this one, they can watch several. There's all kinds that we've done in Houston, Seattle, LA, and we just teach the same exact thing. So the first thing that this really took a spin. Does everybody remember the Station 9 fire? Yep. The Station 9 fire, we got a call from Channel 7. Hank Philippi Ryan, anybody ever met Hank Philippi Ryan? And she wanted to do a class on a story, a 1-minute piece on fire escape to say, hey, in case of a fire, you can get out and use fire escape. And once I told her that I've been in this business inspecting everything from Harvard University to Harvey, somebody else who owns one property, and I said, on average, everything I inspect nationwide, everything, 75% of it fails the inspection. Of that, 25 to 50% has a dangling tread or pulling away from the building. Everything. So with that, she didn't believe me, so I took her down here to the theater district, and I gave her a 15-minute class, which I'm going to give you guys a lot longer than that today, and how to inspect fire escapes. Not to get on them, but just to use her eyeball and see standard things. Broken treads, rust in a connection, and I taught her how to look for things that are dangling, truck hits, And so her 1 minute piece turned into this. Sorry that I can't make it any bigger because it's not glitching, so hopefully it makes sense for you.
The smoke, the flames, and the frightened faces. All in a firefighter's line of duty. But Chief William Hitchcock remembers the night it wasn't the fire that almost stopped him, but the fire escape that broke underneath him.
So the railing just came away from the building.
And our investigation found across Massachusetts more unsafe fire escapes. Rusty, deteriorating, crumbling, broken. And what state officials didn't know, the system they set up to keep fire escapes safe is also falling apart.
The potential ramifications are disastrous.
So let's look at this one. This expert ironworker is licensed to build, maintain, and inspect fire escapes. So then over here, for months, we examined dozens of them with alarming results.
Looking at this today, would this pass inspection?
No.
In dormitories, at theaters, at homes, and apartment buildings.
Rust is actually eating away the metal of the fire escape.
Right.
And the bottom line?
It'll get weak and then eventually it'll fall.
This one has rotted connections. This one missing bolts, twisted metal.
Would the stairs come down?
No, never come down.
This one a broken tread.
So how dangerous is it for the people inside this building?
This fire escape is definitely going to put somebody either in the hospital or it's going to put somebody in the cemetery.
Fire escapes are so critical. The state building code requires they be certified for structural adequacy and safety every 5 years. But our investigation found that safeguard is simply being ignored. Here's proof. We chose fire escapes at random in Boston, Somerville, Cambridge, Worcester, and here in Quincy. We checked building department files.
But there's no fire escape certification.
To see if building owners had submitted their mandatory inspection reports.
There's no certification in this one either.
Bottom line, not one we checked in Quincy had been certified as safe. And the Director of Inspectional Services admitted because of staffing shortages, the city has no idea how many other fire escape owners are breaking the rules.
And as a result, do you know how many fire escapes in your city are safe or not?
Well, I don't know.
In Worcester, not one we checked was certified. In Somerville,
No.
4 more fire escapes,
Did it fall through the cracks? Yeah.
not one up-to-date certification. And again, no system for keeping track. How can they get away with that?
I guess that the shortest answer of all is because we don't have the resources to sit here and follow up on these things.
If structural deficiencies are reported, local building inspectors can actually evacuate residents until repairs are made.
Would you talk to us on camera about this? No?
But when we surveyed 24 more communities, most admitted they had no idea how many fire escapes were certified. In Taunton, inspectors told us they haven't seen a certification in 25 years. Northampton officials said it's a cold day in hell when that happens. In Cambridge, too, not one of our test buildings was certified, and the official in charge would not come out to discuss it. In Boston, where there are more than 8,000 fire escapes, again, according to inspectional services, not one we checked was certified. Officials know they are required to enforce the building code, but they admit they don't always know if owners are breaking the law.
The building code is being ignored.
Right, but it's difficult to write a violation. You don't have knowledge of something like that.
But state officials say for a critical issue like this, communities should know. And they warn the Massachusetts building code is not optional.
Does it worry you that these fire escapes are not being certified?
This is an important issue and should not be ignored.
That's because after the smoke and flames begin, it'll be too late to learn you've got no way out.
I can't stress enough, Hank, that these things have to be maintained and someone's got to be watching.
As a result of our investigation, state officials will now issue an alert to local inspectors. Meanwhile, if there's a fire escape on your home or office, you can contact your local building department to make sure it's properly certified. In the newsroom, I'm Hank Philippi Wright.
So, if you have a management company, an owner that is not understanding that why you're asking for something that he's never had to deal with in 25 years, would this be something that you could probably send him as a little snippet and say, here, watch this first, then call me. Just looking for my little remotes. my little clicker button. I put it down. I can't click along with this thing. No, I think I put it.
It didn't look like a donut, did it?
Oh, I think I know where it is. I know where it is. Great. So, with that, imagine right now. To make it easy, you know what Boston did immediately right after this? They put a little, they have a checklist in Boston to immediately address the situation. Right now, you pull any permit in Boston, whether it be electrical, plumbing, whatever. In order to close the permit, you need to have a current certificate. Are they actively looking at every city, all the 8,500? No. Are they doing something about it? Yes. Did they make it a checklist item? Yes. Did that help? Yes. So on your checklists, if you can just add one thing, you're not asking anybody to certify their fire escapes. You walk in, you say, you know, you're inspecting a building for lead, for smokes and everything. You say on your checklist, you ask, do you have an internal or external second means of egress? And they say, oh, it's in the back. You say, great, I just need a copy. You haven't even gone to the back yet. I need a copy of your 5-year certification. If they say, what's that? It's just a no. So your application is incomplete. On a checklist item, you haven't even gone back there yet. You don't care whether it's good or bad, which you do. You just want a proper certification, so put it as a checklist item. As soon as you've done that, you don't have to remember this anymore. Because you're asking, where's your smoke sign off, right? Because don't they have to have a smoke detector sign off from the fire department? It's just, with your smoke detector sign off means that the alarm goes off. You kind of climb out a window and you step on something, so I need a copy of your certification. And you don't ask them to inspect it, you basically refer them back to the building department. In case there's any noise, you can just send them that little clip. So we can send this little clip, and then he can send that off. Every time you got somebody screaming and yelling about the situation, what's this all about? I haven't done this in 30 years. You let me watch that little Channel 7 news piece, which is not your piece. It's not my piece. It's good old Hanfield and Ryan. She's good. She got the word out. She said that most of them haven't seen it in 25 years. Yes. Very good question. Now, I don't know all the inner workings of insurances and stuff, but this is how you get out of whatever insurance situation you have. You send out one bulletin to everybody that has a piece of property, and you say, please provide us with the most current certification of your building so that we can put it in our records, or please have one ordered. By you sending that out, you basically have protected yourself because you've asked for it, because they're supposed to have it for your records. And if one hasn't been done, I can order one immediately for you. So that's how you basically get that liability off of your thing. You just send it out in a simple letter saying, hey, I need a copy of what you're supposed to have anyway because the law says you're supposed to have it. And yes, the insurance company is always looking for a loophole. So if you get hurt, let's just get away from fire escapes. I've got a building, 5-story, beautiful elevator, antique, it's beautiful, but I haven't touched it in 17 years. And one day, one of your inspectors gets in there to go look at an apartment, and the cables let go, and a bunch of people get hurt. They never die, they always get hurt. And we'll talk about what live load testing looks like. Will the insurance company pay that claim if that elevator has not been inspected regularly, which I believe is every 2 years? And there is no certificate, not even in the elevator or in the jacket or in the office, that they always claim, you know, certificates in the office. Will the insurance company pay that claim? Can't. It says, the law says you must maintain this, and you haven't. 17 years you haven't been maintaining it, so why should we pay this claim? This wasn't an accident. This was negligence. And we have a case where that happened, where a fireman got hurt, a 27-year-old fireman, uncovered. He got hurt. He sued the owner directly for negligence. It wasn't a work-related accident, even though he was saving a lady and a baby from the 3rd floor. So this is live. This is what we're going to be talking about, live load testing. And we're going to go into a lot of different scenarios, but this is the worst-case scenario. Is fire escapes are made for people to self-evacuate. And then it's made for firemen to get into your building. Everybody's working on this sheet here. Let's talk about where that happened. This is a Boston event. Marlborough Street in the 70s. Herald reporter was there. A fireman was saving a woman and her niece at the last second as the fireman was waiting for the ladder to come up, because this is up on the 4th floor. So they were using a ladder. The last second the fire escape pulls away, the fireman grabs the ladder with one hand. The woman tries to grab him. They all fall away. She died, and the niece, her 8-year-old niece, survived. Back then, the law was fire escapes must be maintained at all times. Same code. But after this, the law changed, and it said, now you must prove it every 5 years. So that's the reason why the law changed. Okay? Now, what we can do is, one of the other things that he mentions that I try to change a lot of things nationwide, I'm trying to change the law nationwide so that from now on, all rent checks have to be collected by the landlords through the fire escape. So everybody now just duct tapes their checks to the outside of the windows. Management companies and landlords are now going to have to basically time the fire escapes once a month to go get their checks. You know, if landlords fall and die, it's not going to hit the news. But whenever firemen, babies, and people, tenants fall, then everybody gets yelled at. And it usually starts yelling backwards. They go, oh, there was inspectors here from housing. How did this go? And then it's the building inspector from the town was here. How did this happen? The fire department was just here, and how did this happen? 3 people that didn't see that this was going to happen. So we're going to cover that with you. Let's talk about live load testing. You guys are actually live load testers. Every time you go to a building and you walk out, you're doing what's called a live load test. Because we know what it looks like when you pass. You guys know what it looks like when you fail. So you will never get on the fire escape because you're going to get enough knowledge from today's class and from the stuff that we put on here so that you can have confidence. We're going to make fire escape safe again. Because let me give you a couple of tidbits. If you're ever in a fire department training room, the gray-haired guys tell the black-haired guys, in case of fire, don't use the fire escape. Now, did anybody ever tell you that from the fire department? They ever come tell you, listen, by the way, just let everybody know that even if the fire escape today, we're never going to use it. That's because they've lost confidence in it. 75 years ago, they stopped repairing them, they stopped testing them, they stopped doing anything to them. So why are you guys walking out there and doing live load tests? So let me tell you that a couple of incidents that occurred. And this is an older picture, but before AC, what was the main way of getting cool in the winter, in the summers? You sleep out on the fire escape. So this is sleeping out on a fire escape. A lot of it was happening in New York City. That's what you do. Put a mattress out there and you sleep out on a fire escape. This happened. This is not Harvard University, but in the Harvard University area, the Harvard Square area, they have a lot of students that came out of their buildings to look at the parade. And a lot of these beautiful old buildings have cast iron railing tops, and they were leaning on it. That cast iron piece fell about 10 feet long, came down, hit the ground, missed a bunch of people, ricocheted, and then hit a bunch of people. All because the top piece of the molding on this beautiful thing. But this is what the parade kind of looked like. One of our guys, his dad in Chicago, 4 years ago, 7th story, fixing a fire escape pretty much like this. This is not him, but this is just doing that. All fell apart, and he fell to his death. Firemen go into your buildings all the time to go pull out people because they, for some reason, can't get out the front door. That happens all the time. So imagine saving a child only to have the fire escape fall away with a fireman that saved the child only to be either hurt or kill the child falling away. And this is the worst case scenario. This is when all hell breaks loose. These guys are supposed to get out of the building. The only thing they got is your fire escape. Other things are going on. Parties. You got some buildings that everybody parks in the back, goes up through the fire escape. It's not a fire escape. It's the main means of egress into every apartment. Because they don't want to go park in the back, walk to the front, then walk up the stairs. They do bikes, the trash, everything is through the back. People are taking pictures. College students hanging out. It's all live load testing. This happened down here in between the border of Rhode Island and Massachusetts. I was involved in this case. This is a 5-unit condo. There's a fire escape down there. There's a fire escape here that's down on the ground. And then to the right of it, where I'm taking the picture, is our fire escape just like this. See all the rust? The guy did his own roof. The owner did his own roof before he sold it all off his condos. Well, what occurred here was one of the condo owners was selling it. So it was the condo owner plus a real estate agent, the buyer and a real estate agent, plus one of the condo trustees. They wanted to go up and look at the roof. The whole thing fell to the ground. Not to the ground, though. They had a nice floor just below them, thank God. They only fell 10 to 12 feet. Everybody was mangled, everybody was scratched, everybody broken bones, nobody died. You grab the phone and do what? Who you call? That's right. Some call 911, some say call their lawyer to call 911. These things just, then it gets all marred up in issues. It's a case I'm on in Iowa. 3 kids were up there watching the fireworks. This is a landlord who owns a majority of the property that houses all the college students. So it's an independent guy that owns a majority. Tons of money this guy had. And all of a sudden, when his guys came and fixed the building, and they took off this bracket, which is this bracket right there, and they took it off the wall on that side that used to have a through bolt and a plate, what did he put it back in? He put it back in with a screw. So it's a 1/2-inch hole with a 1/2-inch light bulb. Guess what happens when the kids are up there watching the fireworks?
Yeah.
So, boom, they landed here and they landed on the ground. This is all their blood. 2 guys and a girl, maimed various ways. So their college career got cut short. This is us at the site. Looking at evidence. All this was in a field. And now this is us doing the investigation, plus a lot of lawyers all around there. But we found not only the bracket, but then we found both that matched. So even though evidence was not being destroyed, it was being used, we were able to find a lot of missing pieces. So a lot of lawyers get very happy with this stuff. So we'll talk about it. The guy put it back the next day. The problem was the guy who put it in had Joe Landscaper put it back in because not only did they through bolt it back in, but then they put a leg to it, right into the asphalt shingles. The corner put a couple of legs here right into the asphalt shingles, no pressure treated wood. And even on the corner where it was kind of tied in, there was a hole there for them to just put a screw back in. They didn't put it. I was able to videotape myself lifting the bottom, walking to the left 2 to 3 feet, then bringing it back and dropping it. So it hasn't settled yet, but it's about to settle very shortly because of all the information. In Boston, Beacon Hill, this see the missing rail that's up there? This happened to a girl, 26 years old, and her and her boyfriend. The boyfriend has an apartment on the right side that leads to another area because it's a hill. His window goes right to somebody else's roof that has a roof deck. So when you're 26 years old, 3 in the morning, drinking and having a good time, where do you go having the last drink? Then all of a sudden the phone rings, and who's going to get it? The guy who lives there knows the way back, or the girlfriend says, I'll get it.
That's right across the street from both the Salt and Stall and Ashburn place.
Yeah.
I know this thing.
And she fell 5 stories.
Across
We're
from all
dead.
the regulars.
She died.
Is that why the Jake threw the little boy last week that was on Ellen? He didn't trust them. They know better. He actually threw the little boy into the arms of the grandmother. Is that how bad the situation is?
Fire escapes? It's one of those that it's got 75% of everything I see doesn't pass. 25 to 50% of it has life safety issues. So the answer is more yes than no.
They'd rather throw a child out.
Oh yeah.
Than use a fire escape.
There's just no confidence. That's why we do this class nationwide. Our reason is for that. But there's a way to change it. A lot of it is, it's not that it's not the first thing in your mind. These guys are just overloaded. They got a lot of things on their mind. But as soon as you make things checklists, as soon as you add something to a checklist here, a lot of them don't have to remember it anymore. You know, you're asking for a bunch of things. I need a lead inspection certificate. I need a copy of the certificate from the fire department. From the smokes. I mean, there's all these things you ask for. It's just something you add to your list. And at the very bottom it says what's your means of egress. Is it internal or external? Because if it's too internal, you don't do anything. It's inspected by somebody else. The fire department and the building department inspect internal staircases. But as soon as the guy says, I got an external one, you say, boom, I need a copy of certificate. You're not ordering inspections. You're supposed to already be there. And as a matter of fact, if you want to send out to all your departments, just ask all your departments to send everybody out there that has external means of egress. We need a copy for our files. We need copies of all your current certifications. That blast will, just so that you can eliminate your liability. You asked for it today. You put a line in the sand from all the authorities out there. They have to get that out to all the tenants. Just say, please provide us with the most current. Now, who inspects fire escapes, right? Everybody all 50 states, structural engineers. In some states, civil engineers and structural engineers. And the code here is structural engineers and or others acceptable to the building official. Okay? Some states allow architects. This state doesn't say that they allow architects, but every now and then you will see an architect inspecting a fire escape. Some people claim city officials inspect fire escapes. So they think the city official who walked by there last week certified the fire escape. They think you guys did your inspection and you certified the fire escape. They think that the fire department walking through had certified the fire escape. They know it's an independent inspection that needs to be done. And then there's fire escape inspectors. There's only two I'll show you in the form I sent you. There's only 2 licenses in the entire country. One's out of Boston, which I hold, and one's out of LA, which I hold. In Boston, say again?
No, go ahead.
There's only no other states have no other states have any licenses. So there's nobody out there really looking at fire escape. They're really relying on the engineers to do a lot of this, right? But in Boston, if you do window guards and railings, and you occasionally sell an I-beam, all of a sudden now you can sign off on a fire escape in Boston. You can take that same license and sometimes go north with it or go south with it, and some city official will allow a G3 license to sign off on a fire escape. The only problem that occurs there is that if you're a vendor, it's like an electrician being able to sign off on his own electrical. And because there's 2 permits, that a permit that needs to be pulled. There's a repair permit and there's a paint permit. Does a paint ever need a permit? If you're going to paint something, you ever need to pull a paint permit? No. If you're painting something, they don't want a permit. So guess what every fire escape in Massachusetts gets repaired under? Paint. So I never have to pull a permit on a paint permit. I just show up and I start fixing it. When they show up, they say, hey, what are you doing? Oh, I'm painting the fire escape and I'm changing a couple of bolts. So you have a G3 license in your pocket. You're the vendor fixing the thing. There's no permit pulled so that, the city official. So Joe Landscaper is now fixing fire escapes with paint. Billy Bob, electrical guys fixing fire escapes with paint. Ernie the welder is fixing fire escapes with paint. And guess who's watching their work? And then at the end, they just need this little document that says, I fixed your fire escape, especially in Boston. So guess what happens with a lot of these jobs that have rust in the connections, and you spend thousands of dollars. And here's the example. 5-story fire escape. Full metal stairs with a cantilever to the ground. 50% of it is rotten, with treads, 100% connection rust everywhere, 50 to 75%, so a total refurbishment. Plus, rebalancing the cantilever with a release arm. And that owner just got, whether it be in Boston or Lowell, he just got a scrape and paint violation. Because that's the other mistake that they've made, and that's why we do these classes. Building inspectors are now writing repair, paint, test. They're not writing any more scrape and paint. Because now, the old landlord got a scrape and paint violation in his hands. So who's he called first? Joe the painter. Joe the painter comes out and looks at this 5-story building full of stairs with a cantilever to the ground and says, how much you charge me to paint this fire escape? He goes, he walks up and down and says, I can paint this thing for $2,000. By the way, you got a couple of loose treads up there that you should get. He goes, no problem, I'll have the ironworker look at it. The ironworker comes in and says, hey, I need you to fix this fire escape because I have a guy that's going to paint it. As soon as you fix those couple of treads, the guy goes, okay, I'll take a look at it. He loads up and comes back down and says, you got a lot more problems than just those 2 treads. And by the way, I can paint it too. I say, great. So fix what you need to fix. And then tell me how much you want to fix. The guy, I can repair this whole fire escape correctly, remove all the rust, all the connections, and paint it under the new EPA guidelines, which we're also going to talk about today, for $20,000. Okay? So we got the owner with a violation that he got from the city official, scrape and paint it. And you got 2 quotes. $2,000 to scrape and paint it, which will satisfy what this thing just said. And this other guy that gave him $20,000 to bid that says repair, scrape and paint it. Who do you think has been winning for 75 years? Okay? So the guy shows up with a bucket of paint and silicone. Paint paints everything that's rusty. Silicone covers everything that looks like rust. If there's a big gap, just fill it with silicone. You can't see it unless you poke and prod. We're going to talk about original hardware and how when you look up a fire escape, all you have to look for, and we'll teach you that, is original hardware. So there's a little bit of an abuse happening. Boston will let you sign off on all their fire escapes with the G3 license. Chelsea doesn't accept it. Arlington doesn't accept the G3 license. They want a structural engineer. Understand? So the main thing you have to make sure that your fire escapes, when they're getting inspected, and we're going to cover all that, is who's doing the inspecting and the oversight, and who's doing the repairing, to make sure it's legit and there was a permit pulled. You don't have to deal with that because, again, you're just looking for that certificate. But once you get the certificate or a copy of it, you still have one more thing to say, whether or not you're going to accept it. Because if you see things in there that somebody just bought a piece of paper, you can reject that piece of paper. Say, hey, I got a little training, and thanks for the piece of paper, and I'll show you that in a little bit. But, and I'll use this as an example. Right off the bat, you guys haven't even been trained on fire escapes yet, but this is one of the fire escapes in the back of one of your buildings, 5-story. Pass or fail. Right? And this is the same fire escape, right? Pass or fail. Thank God it's white. The best fire escape you can ever look at is beige and white ones. Pass or fail. Okay? So, I got a letter from a secretary who got a letter from a structural engineer. And guess what he said?
It's okay.
It's okay. You need to paint it, and there's 2 treads you need to fix. This is the letter from a structural engineer. And when you read the 4 things he wants, there's a bend platform that he needs you to bend the flat, fix 1 tread that fell on the floor, and scrape and paint it. And I'll certify it. That's it. So here's a structural engineer letter. It's called an opinion letter. Because a lot of times in the disclaimers down here, guess what he disclaims? Anything I didn't see, anything I didn't touch, anything I couldn't find, it's not my issue. But when I drove by in my car, I kind of saw these things from my car window. That's called a drive-by, fly-by. These are all the things I found. Total rust. Huge rust. And we failed the fire escape. But only because the secretary said, I don't think this guy knows what he's talking about. So that's the kind of power you have also, that once you get a copy of a certificate, it's just like you getting somebody that says, yeah, I painted, or I've been de-leaded, or I've been this. And you guys look, I know what de-leaded houses look like. I know what safe windows look like. I know what a good furnace looks like. You guys have all this. The knowledge you're going to get today is just that awesome. The other license out there is California. Now, this is the sheet you use in California to inspect everything that's in fire protection. So what we did is we found that there was no confidence test specific to fire escapes in the nation, so we made one. We made one that basically asks legitimate questions to the inspector, which are statements, yes, no questions. No longer do you have an opinion letter. And that's what the only 3 types of inspection you have. Opinions, and the second one is load tests. When's the last time anybody here witnessed a load test? So what we've done is we have 3 letters, 3 opinions that you get out there, or 3 types of questions you get to the building inspector. You wrote a violation to my client. You want an opinion letter with a ton of disclaimers? You want a refurbished fire escape, which is certified fire escape. Means we not only fixed what we could see, but everything we couldn't see, we investigated, and we can tell you that it's either been verified or nullified or duplicated. Or do you want a live load test? Because the code here in Massachusetts lets you load test fire escape, even though it never happens. So we're going to talk to you about the code. So with that, we designed the confidence test. This confidence test is one that is pretty simple. It just, it has all the information about the client in the beginning, with a ton of disclaimers. And then it has yes/no questions that are general questions and structural questions. And they're not like, what's your opinion? It's like, did you remove 100% of the rust, Mr. Engineer? Did you notice, did you, in your oversight, make sure that 100% of the rust was removed of all the connections? Did you verify the connection into the wall? Did you investigate or did you duplicate that unknown, which was cheaper to the client? That's what they did here. So with that, believe it or not, we got this. We teach a class through Kane University. We teach a 6-hour continuing ed course on this stuff. I have to slow it down. There's a lot of singing and dancing. I bring belly dancers through, but otherwise, 6 hours we teach this class. And nationwide, the one that first grabbed this, believe it or not, is Seattle, Washington. You go to seattle.org. You go to their fire prevention page, and they have confidence tests there for sprinklers, for smokes, for everything, including our confidence test. They copied all the questions out of our confidence test and made a confidence test. So did Tacoma. In New Jersey, a lot of the cities down there are using our confidence test. A lot of the cities in Texas, New York. Now, a lot of these should be state law, but guess what happens when you try to work things from the top down? It's like pushing molasses in the winter up a hill. But what we've done in the grassroots level is we've worked all around the country in little spots here. We're now in Portland, Oregon. LA is looking at our confidence test now. Chicago. We've been everywhere with this. And all we do is we just plant the seed and let it grow, and hopefully nobody pulls it up. But it just makes common sense that instead of you getting an opinion letter from an engineer, you get this letter that he has to sign, and he has to answer these yes/no questions. And then he has to sign it, and guess what happens? When he signs his statement, that he's watched it, he's looked at it, and that he guarantees it with no disclaimers, he becomes liable. He assumes it, which he's not doing when he's giving you an opinion letter today. So, and if he doesn't want to do this, you know what the only other option you have for a fire escape? Is you got to load test it. Because as soon as you load test it, guess who's liable? No one. You just load tested it. It can fall the next day. But it passed the load test yesterday. That's the only options you have. Load test or certified repaired fire escape. And that's what these tests, this confidence test here will give you a certified repair. And I'll go into detail as to exactly what it is. In questions, these are general, which is about the doors, how you get out, do the windows all operate, no trash, no ACs in the window. That's these questions, and these are all the structural questions, including that the cantilevers, when released, drop. I'm going to go over all that stuff today. Here's the great thing, Tacoma copied our test, and this is what their test looks like. So you go to tacoma.org, go to their page, and you can download. So if you don't want to use my test, and you want a nationally recognized test, go to seattle.org or tacoma.org and steal their test. Change your name at the top. These come in PDF and Word documents. And all you do is you take their stuff off the top, put your name in there for the housing authority thing, and there's a industry standard confidence test. And if you get any noise from a building inspector or from an engineer, you say, you don't have to use my form that I pulled off the internet. What you can do is answer the questions on your letterhead. So if Mr. Engineer is so proud about his letterhead, you say, okay, these questions are all numbered. Just can you answer each and every question on your letterhead and throw this form away? It's an industry standard form. By the way, as of spring, we're already starting what's called the National Fire Escape Association for this very reason. Because God forbid some kid from Boston is telling everybody how to do their work. They won't accept it because it's either tainted with the word fire escape services or it's tainted because of fire escape engineers. So we're starting the National Fire Escape Association. So you'll be able to go on nationalfireescapeassociation.org, and on there will be videos to train you, industry standard documentation. Everybody's form that's out there will be somehow housed in there. Any and all information that we have, including industry standard documentation, will be there. So now you can actually point to an association, and members like you are going to be part of it. Engineers are going to be part of it. Housing inspectors and building inspectors are going to be part of it. So is vendors who are going to be repaired. So now, in order to be part of that association and sort of say I'm an approved member of the NFVA, it basically gives you that credibility that says I follow their standard. And their standard is going to be minimally every fire escape ever fixed nationwide has a 10-year warranty. So regardless of whether they change owners on that building, that fire escape is guaranteed to pass an inspection for the next 10 years after refurbishment. And that'll sort of raise the bar way up here so you don't have to worry about those things, failing every 5. Guaranteed certification for 10. The one thing I liked about Tacoma that they did is they did one more sheet, and that was a yearly. So we now incorporated the yearly, and this is for the owners. The owners or the management companies must walk their fire escapes once a year. And they have 3 questions. Are the bolts looking good? The paint looks good? And the windows still open up towards the fire escape? It's pretty easy, right? And they sign at the bottom saying, yeah, I was there. And you can do this during your yearly inspections, during the fire yearly inspection, or during the building inspector's yearly inspection. But you want a copy of this yearly that says that the owner or the management company has looked at it and removed any trash, any things that are on the fire escape. So, simple questionnaire. This is what tags look like in Seattle. Not only in Seattle because of our class, and guess why we got pulled out to Seattle? Because they felt like being proactive, or because 3 guys fell from the 3rd floor while having a smoke?
Proactive.
So with that, we got pulled out there, and they went from, I consider, dead last, because there was an ability there for you to self-inspect your own fire escape. And literally write a letter to the city official saying, I'm looking at my fire escape, it looks pretty good. Now, every fire escape in Seattle, and they're in their 3rd year now with this, must have a tag. A white tag, and theirs is monstrous. It's 19 inches by 11 inches, plastic, 7 to 10 feet, permanently affixed to the fire escape. And every fire escape must have a tag. If it's not white, it's got to have a yellow or a red. Yellow means it's under repair. Red means it's got life safety issues, and usually the building is either under watch or it's emptied. The building's been emptied. But imagine now what this means for them. They sent out this letter to everybody in the city. You must have a tag on your fire escape. So imagine a fireman in the middle of the night getting to a fire escape, and they've been hearing the word, don't get on a fire escape. But now that Seattle has a new law, they say if it's got a white tag on it, get on it. Because it's got a white tag. And on the tag, it tells you not only when it was inspected, when the next inspection date is. So you don't have to have somebody from the office say, was this thing certified? It's an immediate knowledge that they have so they can just get on it safely. If you have a yellow tag on your fire escape and it says fire escape has deficiencies and you're paying rent to your landlord, what can happen if all of a sudden you find that you have a fire escape outside your window that keeps saying it has deficiencies and never gets to one that says I have no deficiencies? They stop holding rent, and that's going to help push this thing along. So, and if it's got a red that says fire escape is unsafe, it's out of service, you know. So there's a little bit of an ability for the tenants to assist in pushing this thing along. Okay? So this is what they do. But our tags are, and we use this on every inspection we do, we make our tag, they didn't have by one. It's easy to produce on a photocopier. Yes.
So if the fire department responds to a fire and they get there and they see one of these red yellow tags on the back, they just not use the fire.
They're going to do what they always do anyway. They never get on it anyway. They're just like, hey, I get on this thing, then they grab a ladder. But here's the worst part.
Just put a ladder up to the window, and they'll try and get people head first down that ladder before they ever get on the fire escape. That's like marching orders for fire. Don't get on the fire escape. Don't get on the fire escape. That's why tagging, if we can get Boston to tag every fire escape, regardless of its condition, the first people that's going to help is the firemen. Make that instantaneous decision. A lot of people realize you don't die in a fire because of the fire. You die in a fire because of the smoke, which is usually the first 2 to 5 minutes. You can't get out anyway because the smoke catches first. So if all of a sudden a fireman shows up at your fire and he needs to get to your window and crack it open and pull your kids up, but all of a sudden he needs to take an extra 2 minutes to get to his truck, pull out a very good ladder that he's going to use to go crack your window and get your kids out, it doesn't matter anymore. 2 to 5 minutes, it doesn't matter anymore to anybody. So that's what they've done. This is a Route 9. This is a detention center for 17-year-olds and above, juveniles. And look at all the rust. Now, if the sentence didn't get you, trying to get out of the fire escape is going to get you. And this is into an open courtyard in the middle of the thing, secured. But this is how the kids would get out of the building. This is how much rust we found. This right here is, because of all the court cases we've been on, to grow a 1/4 inch of rust in any connection takes 25 years. To grow 1/2 inch of rust, it's over 50 years. How many years of rust we got growing there? Right? This is a school down in New Jersey. Look how much rust is there. Okay? Now, the most important thing is, when I say that you're live load testing, don't ever get on these fire escapes and walk up them, or walk down them, because you realize the fact that you walked it, you're kind of giving an opinion on the fire escape that it's okay to continue using. All you need to do is just look out any window, open any door, and you can literally step out. We'll teach you what to look for. As soon as you step out the window, I have some videos here so we don't have to go on the range to look at fire escapes. But here's what you're worried about. If you're going up the fire escape, you have a chance, because when we go up a fire escape, we have a 3-pound hammer. And we ping the hammer. Not only do we do a visual observation for our protection, the hammer test is not really for the fire escape. The hammer test is really for our safety, whether or not we can step on that tread. So when it's the ping-pong test. As we ping it, and it rings, it's a good connection. Even if it has rust in it, it's still nice and tight. But when it pongs, that means it's got a lot of rust in it. And this is what happens because we're going up. We can stop our inspection at any time. But if you're one of those people that go to the 3rd floor and start walking down the fire escape, this is what you're facing. 3-pound hammer.
Okay, I think that's it. You want to stay down?
Okay, so he had to stop because as he was going up, all the treads had that much rust in it. Now, if you're coming down, a 3-pound hammer is the equivalent of your body weight coming down on one side, and you're stomping on that tread going down. So if you weigh 200 pounds, you're putting 200 pounds of force on a tread on one side, and if it's all rust and the bolts are gone, you go through it. Now, here's how you're going to go
suddenly,
through it.
too.
You go down suddenly.
It took a few whacks to break. I had one 5 stories up, and Julio break underfoot, and
exactly just like you said. Put my foot on it and it broke. There was no stop.
And if you don't hold on, what happens is your body's still moving forward.
Terrible.
You actually snap your knee forward. Think you'll ever come back to work? If you snap your knee forward? Now, if you're going up the stairs and you fall through and you fall backwards, the knee is going in the correct direction. You'll scrape, you'll break it, you'll twist it, we'll do something, you'll be back to work. But if you're going down a set of stairs and the thing goes and your leg is jammed in there and your body weight is still going forward, you will snap the knee or you'll snap. One of the bones has to give because there's too much body weight going forward and you got it locked into a piece that vice grip your leg. It's going to snap your knee, snap your bone, or snap your shin. Cantilevers. Okay? Let's talk about what you see out there. A lot of people don't realize how these things are built. And I'm going to talk to you about what their purpose is. But see these boxes back here? In the Midwest and up to California, they're all single. They're all on one side. In the East Coast, a lot of them have the double. The back box is filled with trash. Leftover iron, junk iron, rivets, anything you can sweep off the floor. They'll even pour concrete in there to add the weight that they need. And then 50 to 75 years ago, they never sealed it. So what happens when it rains and it rains and it rains and it rains and it goes into that box? Iron that's a 1/4 inch thick will grow to almost 1 inch of rust and absorb that much weight over time. So a lot of times what happens to these fire escapes is as water gets in there, it starts to point into the sky. It'll start slowly like this, but then eventually it'll look like this. Now, what happens is when you walk by it as a building inspector, what's the first thing you're going to write? If you see this thing pointing into the sky.
Yeah, check your weight.
Check your weight, you got a violation. Now, to repair this whole thing and put a release arm on it, a couple of grand, right? Or do I go to Home Depot and get a chain? And I wrap a chain back here, and I pull it, put a chain back in, I pull it, and I tie it up over there, and I make it horizontal. What happens then? Any violation?
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't work.
No, I put a chain on there. Because the only violation I have is not from a tenant. My violation is going to come from a building inspector. But if the thing isn't pointing to the sky and I somehow pulled it up and I made it horizontal, no violation. There's tons of chain. I'm going to talk about it. Next time you see any fire escape with a chain, it's out of balance. So that means to you that you see any chain on any fire escape, it's out of balance. And let me explain why. A 150-pound woman, 50-pound child, dragging, they come down the set of stairs. Let's take this one, they come down, and there's supposed to be a release arm here. But she goes down the set of stairs, and let's say it has the chain, and she steps out on the first 2 or 3 steps, dragging the child behind her. Will the fire escape go down if it's out of balance? She goes 3 to 5 steps up, dragging the child. Usually by then, 5+ treads, she's already counteracted the balance. Her and her child equals 200 pounds. So this thing, it's supposed to drop 2 to 3 feet per second when you release it. Does it drop 2 to 3 feet per second or 5 to 10 feet per second? So 5 to 10, it goes down, slams the ground, and it's a very violent event. What happens to the woman and the child? Well, they either get thrown, and minimally they're going to get scared. So let's say it hits the ground, she screams and screeches, and she holds on, and she's able to hold on. The child starts screaming and crying. But the thing is down. It hit the ground and stayed down. So now she walks down, she gets to the last step, and she steps off. What happens to the child? She's towed. Now these things are supposed to be 12 to 14 feet off the ground so trucks don't hit it. So now where's this child? The mother's on the ground, the child is up how high?
15 feet.
The mother says to what to the child? Jump. Right? The child is up there holding on, screaming, because she just got catapulted and she had to hold on to the catapult. Okay? So the mother's downstairs yelling, there's a fire up above that they just got out of. There's no fireman there yet. So you got a 50-pound child hanging on the end of the thing and it won't come down. The mother says, jump. Now, nobody thinks that a mother would run back into a burning building to repeat the process just to save her child, would she?
I would for my child.
So all of a sudden, she's about to run back into the front of the building or the side of the building, wherever she's going to get to repeat the process. Firemen show up and stop you and say, hey, what are you doing? Oh, my child. No, we'll get it. So the firemen get over there, look up and say what to the child?
Jump.
Jump. That's how. If I don't jump for my mother, I ain't jumping for you. So the fireman runs back to his truck and gets what? No, they get the pole. There's a pole with a hook. They go get that pole and they grab it and they bring it down. 6 guys show up, firemen show up. So the guy pulls this thing down, brings it all the way down, the steps on it, the child reunites with the mother, they take off. Now, this guy that brought the pole is the captain, the commandant, the guy that runs the whole show. And where's his foot now? So you got 5 other guys, and there's fire up above him, and there's all crap going on. And what's he doing now for this fire escape? Because if he takes his foot off, what happens?
Bang, right back up.
So now he's stuck. He's like, man. So he goes, hey, who's the low man on the totem pole? Says, Billy, get over here. Put your foot over here. And he puts Billy now stepping on that thing so he can coordinate the fire control and all that other stuff. But the 6-man team became a 5-man team. And God forbid things are falling because that Billy, you think Billy's going to sit there underneath the fire getting ashes on his head?
That's Carlos's job.
So it's things like that. Now watch how violent this is. Notorious for knocking these things down, right? And that's why people put these chains on it, because if they were out of balance, they were always getting hit. So people started using chains to basically, instead of correctly balancing them with a release arm, they just put chains on them to keep balanced.
You know, now you got the dumpster trucks with the forked fronts, and the 15 feet means nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's for a box truck. Clearance.
Yeah.
So once you start picking dumpsters up overhead, that 15 feet means nothing.
In the alleyways, this is notorious. Here's a Waltham. We inspected the fire training tower in Waltham. They were using this up to the point when I inspected. And when I inspected, look at all the treads.
Excellent.
So the firemen were putting their lives in danger because they put water over this thing every day. More than a ½ inch of rust in all the connections. So the tower got shut down because of the inspection. Chelsea Hills, these are photographs from the Chelsea homes. We inspected them, and all the fire escape had anywhere from ½ inch to 1 inch of rust on their connections. So if the war didn't kill you, the fire escape was going to get you. And these things happen all the time. Things are getting smashed. Now, obviously, if you are walking around the building and you see anything that just doesn't look out of order, even if they're handing you a certificate, like, I'm not accepting this. I want to speak with you, the engineer that inspected this fire escape. And you want to speak with the building inspector because that's his job. That's not your job. That's the building inspector's job. But it doesn't mean you have to accept. If the building inspector's not doing his job in that city, it doesn't mean you don't have to do your job and just accept that because one of your tenants is going to get hurt on this fire escape. This is housing in Boston. Look at all those treads. This is Haverhill City Hall. Look at all the missing treads. Yeah.
It's rampant.
Biggest issue we're going to talk about today is 97% of your fire escape. You can actually see it from the outside. Any engineer, any inspector can look at a fire escape, and 97% of it can be inspected, refurbished, and cleaned. What you can't get is what's inside. we're going to cover today how these are really attached. See all these rusty tears on the outside of the brick? A lot of people don't realize that the veneer, this is a veneer, it's like just a skin. It has no structural value. See that? The wall behind that? That wall is the masonry wall. It could be block wall, it could be 3 layers of dirty bricks. Because the nice finish is on the outside, but that's not structural. And the water sometimes gets in here from the parapet wall up above, and it's been leaking down there for 75 years. And a lot of times it eats the iron on the inside. This is a 22-story building in Chicago for housing, elderly. And basically, it might give you the signal that there's something happening, because look at all the steel on the outside. Look how perfect it is. It's still good. But look at it inside. So if you were to load test this thing, it would rip out simply because the veneer can't hold it anymore, and where it used to tie into the building was being eaten from the inside out and nobody noticed it. So that's the one thing that we're going to be talking to you a lot about today is what have they done on these 50 to 75 plus year old buildings to identify the unknowns. And the unknowns is going to be 2 things: welded connections and interior connections into the building. Because everything else you can identify. And we're going to go over just what is a square head bolt, what is a rivet, and what is a hex head bolt. So if it's got square heads, it's 50 to 75 years old or greater. If it's got rivets, it was built even older than that. It's 75 to 100 years old. If it's got hex heads on it today, that usually means it's gone through a refurbishment of some kind. And as soon as you walk out to any fire escape and you see no hex heads on a 50 to 75-year-old fire escape, brand painted black, like it's shiny as all get go, and then all of a sudden you have a certificate in your hand, and you look up for evidence of maintenance on a 50 to 75 to 100-year-old. You can't leave a refrigerator outside without replacing most of it by the time it's in 50 to 75 years. How can a piece of steel hang outside that long and not have refurbishment? What we're going to teach you today is where does rust come from. A lot of people think on a fire escape rust is from the outside and then it eventually attacks your connections. We're going to show you, and again this is from the classes that we taught and the classes that I was taught by a metallurgist. It's not me telling you, it's a metallurgist in a case for that fireman that we're going to talk about. He says that the rust starts on the inside of a connection because the paint is no longer protecting that connection. It rusts from the inside of a connection, then it eats the rest of the metal on the outside. So once you agree that fire escape rusts from the inside out, and you get to any fire escape that is just full of rust, do we have a paint problem or do we have a structural problem? Structural. As soon as you, and I'll prove that to you today, that even though the guy goes, no, I'll paint it myself. Me and my wife are going to get out and we're going to paint it this weekend. They're like, no, because you let it go too far. You've got worse problems now. You've got structural issues, and I need a report from a structural engineer. Because he's going to investigate and see what's wrong. Yes?
What if your property, you have mowed your property, say we bought one less than 5 years ago. If I go back and find that we have structural problems, we're still on the hook for this, correct?
Yes.
Even though we've passed every inspection.
Yes.
Because potentially we haven't been certified and there's no recourse.
You haven't been certified correctly. But here's what you can do. I've had many people within a 5-year cycle go back and sue the previous owner because they didn't do their job. So you are stuck with it today. You pay for it, you get it done. And all of a sudden, you've got rust on that thing that is 25 plus years old and it's proven through the photographs. You go back, and here's what I tell people all the time. Did you have a real estate agent that you dealt with when you bought that? Yes. They have errors and omissions insurance. You have a lawyer that handled the buying and selling? Yes. They have errors and omissions insurance. You go back and say, the law says you were supposed to certify this over the past 25 years. I just found out today that this thing is not certified, but not today. It wasn't certified 25 years ago, and I only bought this thing 5 years ago, so now I've already fixed it, I've already paid for it. Your lawyer has to go down the rabbit hole for, to chase this. And I usually tell people, use the lawyer that you used to buy it to say, hey, I have a bunch of people I need to sue, including you, unless you want to be the lawyer that goes and chases the situation. And he goes, no, I'll take on the case, pro bono, and...
So, to say a little more to you, generally when you buy a property that has one, just like lead paint, you buy an old property, the smart move as an owner is to make the sale contingent upon a post-compliance assessment determination to make sure your current lead is current. And you get an addendum letter or a brand new lead inspection report, which is worth its weight in gold to you as you move forward because of the minimum standards. It's a separate discussion. But the other thing is that every single home inspector, when you hire a home inspector and he's coming to look at a fire escape, if he's grossly negligent, a lot of the contracts have language that limit to the cost of the inspection, but under mass law, that's not true. They need to all be licensed and carry insurance. So one who neglects to even address the fire escape and its shortfalls on as part of his home inspection representing you, you have recourse. But after 5 years, generally it's 3 years from the date of discovery, but it's within reason. That's not something that you could see readily. It's not a hidden defect, you know. So I doubt you have recourse after 5 years, but it is conceivable that your fire escape needs painting and not a full scale. But you really do need to get it inspected. And once you have that 5-year certificate, if you use this service, you not only get 1 5-year certificate, you get 2. Because he guarantees that the thing is right as rain for 10 years. So anything it needs within that 10 years is.
Yeah, it's warranted, and that's what we want, not just from us. We want to make everybody else that works.
Guarantee or do you warranty? There's a difference.
The warranty is on all the structural. You're supposed to stay up with the paint because there's no paint that will last 10 years. You're supposed to spot paint. But let me mention about the home inspectors. A lot of them have a disclaimer at the bottom, and you just mentioned it correctly. He has to make you aware that there's a requirement to inspect your fire escape. So that's how he addresses it. They don't inspect fire escapes. They just have to tell you that it needs a certification, but at the same time, it's out of their licensing. It has to be a separate licensing guide.
So you put your fire escape in the same realm as lead paint or a well or a septic system. It's got a pass Title V. Your well contingent upon a satisfactory water test. You know, so that way you know if you were looking at 6,000 for softeners or reverse osmosis filtering for your water system.
Well, basically, that's what I need to know for future purchases.
Yeah.
What we've got now, we may be on the hook.
Right. You're always on the hook now. The recourse is behind that. But we recommend that you have your fire escapes inspected to get an assessment immediately, and then from there have a plan. Question?
The other thing is you may want to go to see if there's any CDGB money around too, because I think that if you approach it the right way and it is a matter of some urgency, like the secondary egress is substandard, you can see it from the street, it might actually make you more water income.
Question on this side?
Fire escape, this inspection, does it apply to two-family house?
Everything. Everything, all exterior steel wooden stairs must be inspected. Don't even mention fire escape. Everybody focused on fire escape. All exterior steel or wooden stairways need to fall under 101.3. 1001.3. It used to be 1028.3. Now it's 1001.3.
Oh,
all exterior steel or wooden stairs, balconies, fire escapes, and bridges. You know, crossover bridges at some hotels and or hospitals.
What is the law?
1001.3. Okay? I'm going to cover it here today.
It's Mass General Law.
We're also talking about pieces that are missing on fire escapes, so sometimes we get to your fire escape and you got missing pieces. A lot of people say it's grandfathered in. There's no such thing as a bad fire escape being grandfathered in. A fire escape that was built to code 50 years ago is grandfathered in, but a fire escape built 50 years ago wrong is not grandfathered in. And no, we don't have to upgrade. Every time I inspect a fire escape, it doesn't have to go from 36 to 42. It doesn't have to go from 6-inch bars to 4-inch bars. No. I can repair an existing fire escape and match the existing structure. Nothing has to be upgraded, so don't ever think. But sometimes when they refurbish a building completely on the inside, they want a brand new fire escape on the outside up to code. That will sometimes occur. Sometimes people do it the opposite. They get their fire escape certified first, then they refurbish their building.
You know, we see on the fire escapes a whole lot is you can reach up and touch the service, the electric service entrance wires. There's no barrier between them. And it's, you know, we see that a lot. And ones that are well done, you're starting to see expanded metal screening to stop you.
Yeah, they're usually 7 to 10 feet away.
But that's another thing. You're standing on a steel, platform, and you can touch the service wires.
Yeah, kids can touch it. If kids can touch it, that's the biggest problem. This is a fireman that got hurt in New York that we were doing the case. He fell through three steps. You had to go up here and get a woman out of that window up there. On the way up, he fell through 3 steps there, fell down, came back up, saved her, but the adrenaline was running. By the time he got down, he basically severed or damaged his vertebrae, and 27 years old, he was no longer a fireman. But what's unique about this case is that he sued the owner directly for negligence and won. And so we use that as one of the reasons why because we were called 2 years later to come in as an expert witness, and we showed up and we did some inspection, and when we got there, as we were stepping up, the fire escape was falling apart on us 2 years later. The only thing that didn't fall apart was the 3 treads that they fixed. Once we did the investigation, and I'm going to show you, and this is with the help of the metallurgist, we're going to show you how pieces are made. This right now is very important that you pay attention, is when I explain where rust comes from, then you'll understand when you're looking at a fire escape that's got all kinds of rust on it. Do we have a paint problem or do we have a structural problem? Nice and loud. Do we have a paint problem or a structural problem?
A structural problem.
All right, so now let's open this up and let's go to that page in here. And this is how all fire escapes are made. So go to this page. And this is all fire escapes in the United States are going to fall into this category. That's how long it's been. These fire escapes have been built. They've been built since 1850. Okay, and there's no changes in how they're attached and how they're built. So if you want to make little notes, you want to make them on this page. But let me tell you how. This is a tread connection. If you're ever going to get hurt on a fire escape, it's usually going to be on a tread. But this tread represents a railing, represents a support. When you're making a tread in 1850, or a fire escape in 1850, or in 1950, or today, there's no Home Depot to buy parts for your fire escape. You have to build it from 20-foot lengths of steel. Whether I'm making a railing, whether I'm making a support, or whether I'm making a tread, everything comes from a 20-foot piece of steel that is not primed. When I get those 2 pieces of steel and I put them together and I cut them into 24 inches long, 38 inches long, whatever I cut them, and I put 2 pieces together that I'm about to weld, bolt, do I normally, as a fabricator, prime the 2 before I get them together? In 1850, did they prime them? 1950, did they prime them? Do we prime them today? No. So immediately, you have a problem in that you put 2 metal pieces together that now you can't get primer on it. Whether you bolt it or weld it, you can't get primer. The only thing you can do is paint around it and encapsulate it. And as long as you keep that seal, and rust doesn't have any air or it doesn't have any moisture, will rust grow in there? No. So, 1850, 1950, or today, you think paint crack, paint chips? Is that one of the ways that now what used to be naked between 2 pieces of steel starts getting their rust? This is what we have here, and that's what happens on your fire escape. In the first 5 to 10 years, you get what's called surface rust. And basically, it's cracked paint at a joint. Because in the summer, iron heats up and does this. In the winter, it cools down and does this. And when it does all that, what happens to the stiff paint that's around every joint? Breaks. Cracks it. Water gets in, starts the surface rust. So in 1950, 1950, and today, you think owners go there and scrape that area and then paint it? Or they just paint right over it? Paint right over it. As soon as you paint right over it, the paint that's on the good painted steel and the good painted steel above this, they just got another fresh coat. They're good. But what about the paint you put over a big rust block? How long before the rust eats the very paint you just put on it? A month? 3 months? So immediately, rust says, yeah, I got to put paint on me. I don't care. It's only going to look good for like a month, 3 months. And then it just says, just blows it away and continues delivering to that tread water and air. And so now you have this tread connection that you guys have been walking up and down for the past 50 years. And all of a sudden, it's got a 1/4 inch. It's got an 1/8 of rust. 1/8, a 1/4, or a 1/2. What is the violation here? Because I can hammer test and this thing won't fall. What's the violation? No maintenance. It's got rust in the connection. That's the violation. But the fact that it has a pin in here, whether that's a rivet or whether that's a bolt, you know why you haven't fallen? Because there's a bolt there that doesn't let the thing fall. So even, and this is the bolt. This is the angle set. It rusts. Still won't come down. 1/4 inch. Still won't come down. 1/2 inch. Still won't come down. All of a sudden, little bit more than half inch, guess where I'm at now?
Free air.
Free air. Lots of rust in between it though, that looks like it's tight, and then as soon as you step on it, it's a hand grenade waiting for somebody to go down. Could be your maintenance guys who go up and down to clean out gutters, remove tree branches and stuff. It could be you doing your normal inspections. You're never going to walk on these things because right now, 75 years later, guess where we're at? Free air. And that's where it's going to fall. So the next step right now is when it grows beyond the pin. All your fire escapes today are beyond the pin. Even if it's only got an eighth. I walk up a stair and I see 1/8 of an inch of rust. It already failed. No, it's got to fall. No, the falling is not the failure. Rust in the connection is the failure. So if water is getting into and the client has let the fire escape get surface rust, has it penetrated the connections? Now we have to go through a very laborious activity of removing all that rust, cleaning, priming, and then before I can join the two pieces together, which they don't require in 1850, they don't require in 1950, and they don't require today. Should we put some 50-year silicone in there? Sure, it's a good idea. Nobody makes you do it. But if you're going to have any fire escape, in order to get the 10-year plus, before you seal any joint that relies on paint to keep water and air out, how about if we just inject it with silicone? So now it's injected with silicone and you goop it up with your finger, and then the owner lets it go again for 20 more years and never paints it. You have a structural problem, now you just have a paint problem for 20 years. If it's got silicone in the connection, we've cleaned it out.
It's a paint problem.
It's a paint problem. So as soon as you clean and refurbish the connection today, inject it with 50-year silicone, goop it all around. Now if the owner wants to abuse it, and they will, it's just a paint problem. Okay? We haven't even talked about lead paint yet, so we'll talk about the lead. But if you let it go one more, this is what starts happening. It actually eats the bolt.
Yeah.
Free air, you fall through. And on the way up, when we were inspecting that fire escape for that fireman, this is what we found on the way up. And on the way up, we're starting to step on things. And this is, I'm on a fire escape with tons of lawyers. And I'm the guy inspecting, and I'm falling through the thing. It's kind of they settled this case. You won.
And you probably very comfortable with
Well, it's a 27-year-old cripple. It's like how much money will make a crippled young man happy? It's a catch-22. Like, oh, I got a lottery ticket. I can't spend it because I can't go water skiing. But it's really a catch-22. But the liability. The main point here is the liability that the owner got, because the owners have all this insurance, and all of a sudden the owner didn't maintain the fire escape as required by law. All these LLCs and all this stuff, the owner was held personally liable because it was his decision as to whether or not they should have inspected or not. And that's the back door that opened up the entire assets of the owner, who quickly settled.
Well, he's the property manager.
No, the property managers...
Well, I mean, an owner.
Yeah.
Unless
Yeah, and then the property manager, yeah.
Assumes it. Sure.
But if you're a property manager and you send out a letter that says, I need a copy of the current certification right away, or I'll order one, you don't have any more liability. You've already asked for it. Or 8 months from now, something happened on a fire escape, say, hey, what's happening? I sent you a letter 8 months ago looking for a copy, or if you didn't have one, we were going to order one for you. So that's what we tell in a lot of our classes that we teach to the property managers is get out a letter. As soon as you get out a letter, that's a line in the sand that puts the call on the owners now. Not you anymore. So with all your authorities, if they just blast out a letter, because all you got to get back is something, I already did this, why are you making me do it again? Oh, okay, you're all set then. Done. Because it's 95% of the people that are going to get this letter that are going, what's this? Okay, now we'll look at the little photographs. Everybody doesn't realize, but all steel into masonry buildings goes through the veneer and into the masonry wall. And there's usually a half inch to 3/4 gap in between the two. That if you got a leak on the roof, guess where it comes down on? That's how it gets to your steel. And it'll leak your steel back here, and very rare does it give you the luxury of popping out. So whenever you get anything popping, it's popping at the veneer. Guess what these iron workers are repairing? The veneer. They're not digging deep and checking it back there. They do the veneer, and it looks beautiful at the veneer level. But what about behind? What's happening there? There's no verification. Now, here's a fire escape that has two sets of stairs on it. This stair and that stair on a piece of C-channel, 8 to 12 inches deep, and no brackets. See the bracket that's here? Somebody took the one that was here out. When you load that with people and firemen, what do you think is going to happen? So the answer here would put a brace back on or put a leg to the ground. So everything has a quick answer to it. Problem is, if you don't know what you're looking for, all the rest of the brackets, it's a single bracket into a wall, either has a single bolt or a gusset. And sometimes they have the bottom that basically drives water back into your building. And that's what that looks like. This is just the veneer. You're still 3 inches away from the interior of the building where this thing is connected. So a lot of these guys will take out the brick, pack it, say they're done. So there's no verification process, and here's why. If I'm a vendor with a G3 license in my pocket, and I pull the famous paint permit from the city, which is not even a permit anymore, it's I'm not paying the tax permit. What happens? Once this gets repacked, to you it looks great, doesn't it? But now that you know, fire escapes don't attach to the veneer, they attach 3 inches behind the veneer, this is starting to become suspect. Very rare cases, 2 to 3%, does a masonry building have a through bolt all the way through to the inside. Very rare. It's usually on mill buildings. Otherwise, every fire escape in the United States that is a masonry building is attached only 8 to 12 inches deep. And one of the reasons, too, that when you get them inside, they start crushing the bricks. As bricks get bad on the inside, they start crushing it, and they'll start pulling through. Okay? The plate and the through bolt is only for wood structures. We're going to cover wood structures in a second. There's a lot of water on buildings. Gutters, platforms that are leaning back towards the building, and all kinds of things that are out there that are just tearing these things apart. You don't have to be experts on these things. You just have to make sure that the guy giving you the document is an expert. Making the tenants safe. And sadly, you're going to have to work a little bit with some of your building inspectors. They're overloaded, man. They don't got time to watch all this stuff. They don't have a confidence test. Water gets in, and it's called rust jacking. There's ice jacking, and there's called rust jacking. Ice jacking is when ice gets in between 2 pieces of steel or wood, and it keeps pushing it, jacking it apart. Rust jacking happens 24/7, 7 days a week, except New Year's, they take a break. And it just keeps tearing iron apart. Because a 1/4 inch will go to 1 inch. So if you got rust between 2 pieces, it just tears the bolts, tears the pieces, and it needs room. And it'll crack brick, it'll crack all kinds of things. This is a library here in Boston, near City Hall, near City Center. 1 inch of rust on that gusset. It has kids and teachers in there. Occasionally look at the starter garden, ferns. Fire escapes are great too. If you want to secretly plant certain plants that nobody will say with a plant that. I don't know what he's planting here, but it has a similarity to a plant sometimes that is only grown in northern part of California. Here's the other option that you have on every building. It's into the masonry wall. It's through bolted through a brick structure, or regardless whether it's masonry or whether it's wood, it's got a leg to the ground. That means this is a little bridge. This is my leg to the ground, and my building is a leg to the ground. Is everybody clear on that? So I can fix any fire escape that has a problem with a through bolt. As soon as I put a leg to the ground on it, we've eliminated the issue of the through bolt.
And I was curious, when you showed us a picture previously, you said that the owner had put a wooden piece of not pressure treated. Wood burns.
No.
How is that allowed?
It is allowed. The code is very clear. Most fire escapes are made of metal. But you're allowed to build a fire escape that matches the building type. So if you have a wood structure, you can build a wood fire escape as long as it meets the minimum thickness requirement, which is everything has to be 2 inches thick. If you have a masonry building, it's got to be a metal fire escape. So it has to match the building type. So don't be afraid, because we're going to cover this. There's a lot of wood structure on the back of a lot of your houses. That is the fire escape. Porches with staircases in it, that's the fire escape. That's the second, that falls into the category. And I'm going to cover the category, all exterior steel or wooden stairs. Do we need to mention fire escapes? Oh, fire escapes is one of the categories that falls in. So all exterior steel or wooden stairs. That's what the code starts with. It doesn't even touch fire escapes until later on in the conversation. I'm going to cover it here with you anyway. So this is what it looks like. You know, see all that rust coming down, the rusty tears, we call them dragon tears, or rusty tears. You see dragon tears coming down the side of a building. That tells you what I got in, and it's not trying to get out. This is what happens when trucks hit. When they smash it, the only thing you're going to see is the veneer. You're not going to see what happened on the inside. Because they'll quickly repack this, and you don't know what happened on the inside. And here's your through bolt. All wood structures must have a through bolt with a plate on the inside picking up a stud. If you get there and you see lag screws, 3, 4, 6 of them on the wall, it's an illegal installation. All through bolts on wood structures must have a plate on the inside. And you usually can't see the plate on the inside unless it was a bad installation and the guy didn't care what it looked like. But all through bolts on the inside are buried inside the wall. And it's very easy to verify it. I take a little half-inch drill, and I drill a half-inch hole, and I take those snakes they sell at Home Depot, the little visual snakes with a little light on the end. You stick it through the hole, and you look back there, and you can see that plate on the inside. That's good. And you can verify the bolt on the outside. We can do a pull test right on that through. Because the thread is out, you can do a pull test to see how strong it is. All wood structures must be through bolted. And if you see the head of a lag screw, it's an improper installation. If you see the nut and the through rod that's been cut, that's a proper installation for wood. And that's what it would look like. Again, usually on a wood structure, the big plate picking up a stud. Cantilevers. This is what a release arm looks like. You know there's a lot of release arms on the East Coast. West Coast, there's no release arms. So they rely on you stepping on the first one because it's got to be so perfectly balanced. But the woman comes through, pushes the release arm. The release arm is nothing but a little L-shaped thing that just, when you release it this way, down there it does this. It weighs about 25 pounds on the nose, drops by itself, hits the ground, stays down. By the time she gets to the pivot point with her child, things are already in a down position.
So there's the release mechanism on the East Coast, something that's kind of on snow and ice?
No, it's mainly because, you mean so that it keeps coming down? Yeah. Because as soon as you get pigeons and snow and ice getting on these things, they used to go down by themselves. And the owner would have to go there. And the release arm is it's also an anti-theft device. Because guess what you can't do on a fire escape if you've got a release arm on it? You can't break into it, you can't pull it down. So it's an anti-theft device, but it's also made for, it's called a release cantilever. You release it and it does all the work by itself. Single action requiring no special knowledge. And it basically blocks your way so that, you have to run into the bar. So if you don't even see it, you run into it, you got to push it away with your belly anyway. It's called a release arm. That's what it looks like, see? This release arm, and see it's in an open position. See the chain? See the illegal chain? So if you see any fire escape with a chain on it, legal or illegal? Balanced or unbalanced? 50-pound child, 150-pound woman, what issues we got? Right? She's got to be the one that counteracts it. So does she need any special knowledge to know how to counterbalance? And it's not against the fire code. The fire code must be single action requiring no special knowledge. So whenever you see a chain, got all kinds of things. Smashes, truck hits, chain still on it. The horrors do continue. Fire escape treads are held by 4 bolts. Staircases are held by 8 bolts, 4 at the top, 4 at the bottom. So sometimes it's not just the staircase that's going to kill you. Sometimes it's the entire staircase. And this is what a staircase looks like. It's got to be properly attached up there, and it's got to be properly attached down here. Or if you've got problems and the gussets, the stringer clips that hold it are filled with rust, do you care whether the tread's going to fall or not? Because the staircase is going to give way. This is a 25-story hotel, apartment hotel in Chicago. That was from the street level I took that shot. This is 25 stories. They have 4 major fire escapes in that building. And this one, the only thing holding that is a little bit of the railing. But you load that with firemen and people, boom. And you got this much rust. I'll get in there. If you let me do this under a paint permit, I'll get in there with some Rust-Oleum, I'll get in there with some silicone, and you won't see that by tomorrow afternoon. If I'm doing it under a paint permit. But if I have to do it under the oversight of an engineer, he's going to make sure I clean that out. Because guess what I can't do on a fire escape if the fire escape is under an engineer oversight? I can't paint it. I can repair it, spot prime it, and wait for an inspection and be cleared of what floors I can continue painting, because that engineer who's going to be signing off on a document that doesn't allow him any disclaimers is going to basically say, hey, I saw that connection, I got photographs of that connection primed and sealed before I let this guy paint it. So a lot of this work can be done by iron workers, and the owner can paint the thing after it gets repaired. So I don't think owners can't get involved. They can still get involved to keep the thing painted. But the repair work must be done under engineer oversight. That's how you're going to get the word called guaranteed certification. It means engineer oversight. That means the engineer was there at the beginning when the guy started working. The engineer spot inspected in the middle when they were halfway through. And the engineer was there at the end when they were done structurally before they started painting the thing. And photographed it and videotaped it. And if it's under a permit, which it has to be, then guess after the engineer signs off on this thing is getting painted, what's the last permit? The city official who verified that the guy who used to be a landscaper is now an iron worker with workers' comp and liability. And he has a final sign-off on with the building inspector. So all these eyeballs, and then when you guys get the certificate and you're going back to the building on your yearly inspections, and you're going to be looking at it, looking for the tag, and she's going to be pristine and good. How easy is your job going to be every time you see a fire escape tag on your fire escape from now on? And that the next inspection date is right on it. It says 3 years from now is the next inspection cycle. But it's a white tag. And better yet, not only a white tag, it's got 10 years on it, regardless of who owns that building. Oh, they just sold this building to another investment company, blah, blah, blah. Who cares? It's got a 10-year warranty, and on the tag you know who did it because it has ABC Ironworks is on there. And they have a 10-year warranty on that thing, regardless of the owner.
So are you telling us as property owners and property managers, the next thing coming down the line, i.e. radon was 20 years ago, carbon monoxide detectors were 10 years ago, is fire escapes?
Yes, and what happened was, let me tell you the story of where these fell out of favor. 1930, so from 1850 to 1930, they were building fire escapes as the only second means of egress. That was the answer for everybody. But then all of a sudden, in 1930, the Uniform Building Code change said, you know what, no more fire escapes outside. Everything inside from now on. So when you build a new building with an elevator, I want 2 means of egress on the inside because these things outside are just a pain. And they asked, what are we going to do with all these fire escapes that are on the outside? And they said, well, you know what, in 50 plus years, every single one of these buildings is going to be demolished. And all these fire escapes are just going to go away. So 50 years went by, and guess what happened? Duct tape, bubble gum, paper clips were used to hold these buildings together, and guess what stayed? Fire escape. Now, you can't build a new fire escape today on new construction. You dig a hole in the ground, you cannot build a fire escape anywhere in the United States with new construction. But how many of these old buildings, pre-existing conditions, that need a fire escape as the only means? So when you do a building or a mansion, mansions get chopped up into 4 apartments as an example. The only answer, and the law says you can do it, is a brand new fire escape. So fire escapes became something that came along that was the answer, and they've been staying. But now, 25 years ago there was no problem. 50 years ago there was no problem because the fire escapes were all still 25, 50 plus years old. Now every one of your fire escapes is 75 plus years old. Why is everybody talking about bridges now? You know, all these bridges, I mean, they look great. No, they're at that useful life cycle. They're at the end of it. Fire escapes are now, for no reason other than age, starting to become like, okay, well, we're going to start dropping tenants and firemen. One at a time. You give us another 25 years, we'll just drop everybody. So it was sort of a timing issue. And yes, fire escapes now are, the fact is that for 50 to 75 years, you were getting opinion letters. So a lot of the letters you're going to get backwards, you're going to look at it, it's an opinion letter with a big disclaimer that says, I only guarantee what I saw, and what I didn't see, you can't hold me responsible. So these opinion letters are now going away because we have a confidence test that we're putting in front of somebody's nose. Say, no, sign this document. They're like, well, you know, it's kind of that's very harsh. You know? Then you're not the guy who wants to look at this.
But if we want to be responsible, which most of us do, and, you know, a radon detector was $50, and carbon monoxide good one was $50 for each unit as well. This is a substantial amount of money.
It's it is. Let me give you an answer on that because everybody's going to come pushing back. I'm either, I have no money, I'm in the foreclosure, the building is empty, you name it. Let's give some immediate answers for everybody that's out there. And it's called the emergency repair. Let's say this is the building you got to and the owner says, man, I got no money. I don't care what you're going to throw on me, I just can't afford it. You're going to bankrupt me or something's going to happen, right? I'm going to give you a couple of answers that will satisfy you so that you can get this thing under control for the next 30, 60, 90 days. Ready? The first one is, have you ever seen scaffolding with staircases in it? So, if you order a typical 5-story building, tower of scaffolding with stairs in it, $1,000 for the month, plus minus, right? $1,000 to $2,000 for the month. And that scaffolding company basically picks up the windows or whatever. Will that immediately satisfy the situation so that there's a second means of egress? Yes. Does that eliminate the violation? No. No. But $1,000, $2,000, immediate, boom, right? Now, can that same fire escape now be repaired under an emergency repair order for $1,000, $2,000? Could be more or less, but let's say $2,000. And they make all the broken treads, they make all the connections. They don't remove the rust, which is the reason why you have a violation, but they change the bolts out. They knock out and they secure the fire escape. And now the fire escape is functional for tenants and for firemen. And they have a do not use order that says you can't get on it. The owner is held 100% responsible for anything that's going to happen on it anyway. Does that remove your violation? The emergency repair order? No, it doesn't. So, but does it let the tenants and the firemen continue to use the building?
Yes, but we're still liable.
Yes, of course you are. I'm just trying to give you some ways that you can work with some of the tenants. So that, some of the landlords to say, hey, pick the easiest one. We've got a situation and I got a $25,000 bill that I can't do this till spring. You can order immediate scaffolding, $1,000 to $2,000 to satisfy the situation, as an example. It could be $5,000. I'm just using this as an example. You can order the vendor who wants to do some of the repairs, but the owner doesn't have $25,000 to immediately initiate $2,000 to $5,000 worth of emergency repairs. The owner is still held liable, but now is no longer exposed as much because the thing is under an emergency repair. But believe me, there's disclaimers on the vendor saying, you still own this. I just fixed what I thought was the best, and under the guidance of the engineer and myself, we fixed whatever we thought was the worst situation. But in the meantime, because this is not a $25,000 repair, you still own everything. The authority takes no responsibility. The building inspector takes no responsibility. The owner is the one that's getting 100% responsibility because we're working with the owner due to a financial hardship. No violations just get removed. They just get suspended and pushed forward. Now, with that, I told many people this. In today's economic situation, you got a $25,000 problem. Do you think that some vendors will work with your clients who don't have $25,000 today, but will have it over the next 6 months because they collect their monthly? You think they'll self-finance? The vendors will work and self-finance with the owners of these buildings? If you were a vendor and you needed money, would you drag it out for 6 months and get $3,000 every month and fix a fire escape slowly? So you got all these vendors now, electricians, plumbers, fire escape guys, that will work with your $25,000 problem because you've already given them $5,000 for the emergency. There's another 20 grand to go. And you say, hey, I'll have my money over the next 6 months, so they'll self-finance. We do. We work with people that say, hey, I don't have the money, but I'll have it in 3 months, I'll have it in 6 months, and then we just help finance the thing. Because at the end, we're holding the paper that they want till the very end anyway, so we have the document that they need, but now we're working with the building official, the housing authority, and whoever to basically say it's under control. We'll work with somebody that's not under control.
So this National Fire Escape Association.org that you're starting next spring, is that going to be beneficial for us as property owners and as property management people?
Yeah.
To come there and see what's available for, and is this association, if we join it, or if we use it, utilize it, is it going to lobby for stimulus monies or whatever else that's out there to help us as owners, because we're all in it.
Yeah, I would recommend if you want to join an association right now, we're part of NIAMA. Anybody know NIAMA? And we just did a conference last week with them over here in Norwood. NEHAMA. And there's
Affordable Housing Association.
Yeah, and that's what you want to be. Not all, but a a majority of the management companies belong to these AMAs, and there's AMAs all over the country, and they basically do what you just said. You want to speak with Julie Kelleher, and we just did a class, which is, we're going to show you the class here, and basically we teach. So they're the ones that are going to tell you where the money's at for you to get, monies for from HUD, how to get monies for refurbishment of your properties. So they already exist. We're just starting this because a lot of the information I have has my name on it, and it sort of gets tainted when you start putting our information out there, which is industry standard documentation. So we have to take it and put it in a place that is open to everybody so that it becomes more generic and acceptable nationwide. So, lots of things happening out there. And what time is it? Anybody have any time right now? 20 to 12? Okay. Then I'm just going to quickly go through the end here. We'll put on a couple of videos that show an actual inspection. So we got rust growing everywhere. So basically, once rust is started, there's no way to stop it, because unless you remove it, and some areas are inaccessible, you can't get in there without removing the whole thing. Even ladders. This is very popular in the West Coast. Accordion ladders. Ladders must have weights. They can't be guillotine ladders. They just can't drop to the ground like a guillotine. They have to have some sort of retardant on them. And you got a lot of ladders over the roof for the firemen. Those must be secured. These flop-out ladders are illegal because once they flop out, they can hit you on the head, they can crush you, kill you. So ladders must be attached. So, some of the things we already talked about that you're going to do. Just make it a checklist item. Put it on your checklist. Whoever you have to work with to basically ask when you walk in, you have 2 means of egress. It's your second means of egress out external. I need a copy of your certificate. Just make that a checklist item. This is what we send out now. Every time, in order to remove our liability, you have a city official that gives me a violation, I will give him a letter that says, you pick which one you want. You want an opinion letter, which is an option 1, a visual opinion letter. I have to start naming it. A visual opinion letter, and I have tons of disclaimers, which is a level 1. A level 2 is a calculated load test. The calculated load test is just that. It means that not only do I inspect what I can see, which is 97% of the fire escape hanging outside your wall, I will go and investigate what's going inside your wall. Now, just to give you an example, and then we'll talk about the live load test, which is the piece here. If I have a connection in the wall that's going to take me $250 with a mason guy to open up a bunch of bricks in a variety of areas on a building to identify just what's going on there, per connection, if I have 10 of those, right, that's $2,500 worth of investigation, right? If I have to, in a connection, next to a connection 5 inches away, I drill a new 3/4 hole and I put a Hilti epoxy bolt, and then I mechanically fasten this thing back. Do I need to open it up anymore now? Or is the epoxy bolt in a new connection? So whatever's cheaper and faster to the client, those cost $25 to $50 a piece to do. So a lot of times, instead of investigating a problem, I just let sleeping dogs lie. I just close them up so that no more water gets in there, but I put a new connection. In some cases, I got a 12-foot wide balcony. I'll bring a 3x3 angle and stick it underneath, and I'll run it across the whole length underneath, and I put epoxy bolts every 3 feet. Then wherever the angle touches at the support, I'll mechanically fasten it back with a bolt. Guess what happens? I've just nullified the need to open up that wall. So that's what a calculated load test. And a live load test is just that. A live load test, this is one we're doing in California, 10 stories. I have to put 3,000 pounds on every fire escape, and I'm using a cable. So live load tests can be done. This is a 7,000 pound truck. Sorry about the noise, but we're basically behind underneath it, and we're cranking up, lifting the tail of a truck, 3,000 pounds on a 7,000 pound truck, and doing every balcony has to be done for 30 minutes.
You said you're standing there.
Oh, you say that's another problem, right? So we know what a pass looks like. You know what a fail looks like? That's why there's not a lot of load testing, because some of these are so difficult to load test. But can we refurbish them with safety? Yeah. So in lieu of a load test, and it says right in your code, in lieu of a load test, this is what I have to do to dig holes and verify connection. And sometimes a 3/4 is not enough, I got to do 2. Why don't I just drill a hole next to it 5 inches away and then have an angle clip come back? Because once I'm done with this investigation and throwing my snake down there and photographing, I got to fill it with cement anyway. So it's a crazy process. So we recommend duplication over repair and verification, because this is what it looks like inside. Can you decipher what the hell you're looking at? So it becomes, and this is what we find on the inside, see? We have to investigate. Now we're CSI fire escapes, you know what I'm saying? It's a very difficult situation. Just duplicate the connection, be done with it. So this is what the confidence test looks like. That yearly thing we recommend highly. This is all the Boston ones. This is a certificate from Boston. It says, to the best of my information, knowledge, and belief, the fire escape is in conformity with the Mass Building Code 1028.3, which is now 1001.3. That's all I need to sign. And see these little check boxes? I put those in myself. They don't only want those check boxes in there. So to the best of my information, knowledge, and belief is the only letter you get out of the city of Boston. It's got some abuse that can happen. It's an opinion letter. This is right here, a letter from one of the letters that as an engineer you send to the vendor. You will follow all these rules. This is how you're going to fix everything. And the majority of this is remove the rust, prime the connection, fill it with silicone, put a new bolt in it. Doesn't get any simpler than that, but we have to write it so that they say, oh, you didn't tell me to do that. Well, that's what these are for. This covers everything, including the disclaimers, including, the connections. This is what a typical report looks like. Everybody's supposed to get photographs, because you can't tell somebody how bad something is unless you get a report. And the report's got to have photos. There's a tag on a fire escape. Repair guidelines. And we'll end it here on this one. This is the test to see if this is a fire escape or not. Slidescape is always a good one to show. 12-story slidescape, guys. You open the doors and you slide head first or tail first down this thing, all the way down to the ground. And it's 12 stories of a corkscrew down to here, and then it takes a right angle turn and you go down and your feet hit this paddle of a door that swings open and you run out into the street. 100-year-old building. This is in Elizabeth, New Jersey. It's a dinosaur. No lights. Dark. You got to bring your own flashlight. And it's still operational today because it's fixed. Inside the building.
So where's the smoke factor there?
Again, it was built in the 1970s, so they no longer allow this.
There's exterior slides too.
Oh yeah, they've got rid of them. Yeah. There's some. So here's what the tags are going to look like. The whites and the yellows. This is what a tag looks like on a building when you walk 7 to 10 feet off the ground. Just in case you guys want to, realize that your tenants don't have it as bad. Imagine making everybody do a slidescape. Get credentials from whoever you've got. Check out the reports. Lead safe. Does anybody understand what the lead issue is now? Yeah. To make it even easier for you guys, anything older than 1978, how many older than 1978 fire escapes do you have? You can't weld them now. Well, the best part about it is 98% of them are bolted connection anyway. And if some guy who has been, in the past, the Band-Aids have been paint and welds. No more welding, because you can't burn something that has lead. You have to take the bolt out, which you were supposed to do anyway, and put everything back together. So the lead issue means the guys in the white must have a renovator's license, plastic on the ground, collect all the chips, properly dispose, then they can fix the fire escape. So everybody must have a renovator's license if you're going to touch a fire escape. You must also mark up the fire escape under a oversight by an engineer. He's got to go there and mark the fire escape for the vendor. It's not the vendor fix what he wants. The engineer's getting paid. He must mark everything that needs to be done.
So as an owner,